were inspired by the wonderful book Sit-In, which is a beautiful children's book by Andrea Pinkney and her husband, Brian Pinkney. And the book itself tells the story pretty literally of the sit-in movement. But what we realized was we really wanted to tell this story in a way that makes it more contemporary. So it became more inspired by, rather than trying to put that text on the stage. And what we've created is a young woman, 11 years old, who is involved in the climate change demonstrations. And she realizes over the course of the play that she's not the first activist her family has ever produced, and discovers that her grandfather, to whom she's very close, was very active in Atlanta in the civil rights movement. And that bond kind of brings them together in a way that strengthens her resolve and hopefully will encourage people to talk across generations in their own families to see who's done what that they don't know about, and to get that strength that comes from knowing you're not the first person that ever did this, and you can build on what your family has done, what your community has done. So that's kind of where Sit-In takes us. It's in contemporary Atlanta, but it's looking backwards and forwards at the same time.
This started off as a normal play, but has now since found a life as an animated short. So because of the COVID coronavirus pandemic, we weren't able to do this in person as we originally planned. So what we've done instead is we're working with a production company and with some animators and illustrators to take Pearl's play, create a screenplay, and transfer the story onto the screen so that we can still share it with people, but as a cartoon, as animation.
I have been involved in demonstrations and movements my whole life. And the thing that I'm always very conscious of is that music was such a big part of all of those things. You know, you can be afraid marching into danger by yourself, but not if you're singing real loud. You can't. If you're singing "We Shall Not Be Moved," you feel braver. So that I'm aware of how big a role music had, not only in the civil rights movement, but in the anti-war movement, in the women's movement. And I knew that this play needed that, which is why we kind of landed on the fact that these little girls are singers. They didn't know they were movement singers until the course of the play, but music had to be a part of this play.
I mean, the story was there, you know what I mean? Like, the story was there, and a lot of times as a composer, I feel like if I really pay attention to the story, that the songs will essentially write themselves. Now, that doesn't say that, you know, that's not to say that I don't put in work and that it's not some tough moments of desire, but the story was there, right? The elements that you talked about are all in the story. It's all represented. So if I really pay attention to the story, then it's like a puzzle. It's like, that piece fits there, that piece fits there. So every show that I compose music for, I have a playlist that's kind of inspiration for that show. So for this to achieve what would be a mixture of traditional freedom songs and what a modern day freedom song would sound like sonically, I made sure that I listened to a lot of traditional freedom songs. So listening to a lot of that, looking at a lot of the YouTube videos, you know, from the civil rights movement, where I could hear those songs in their original context. So there was a lot of that. That was kind of the easy part, right? Because there's a lot of that to draw from. The more challenging part that I really got to rush digging into was, what does a modern day freedom song sound like? So then I start thinking, okay, sonically, like, what defines modern music? And so when I think of freedom fighters, you know, I can't help but think of young people, those that are labeled guided and those that are labeled misguided, right? There's a lot of fire coming from young people these days, and that fire comes out in the music. So I kept thinking, what is it that gives kind of modern music its strength, right? What is it, even when you look back at the hip hop movement, and their version of freedom songs. You know, you look at what was considered the conscious era of hip hop, you know, those could be considered modern day freedoms. So I'm thinking, I'm like, drums. I'm like, drums.
Interesting that you were talking about drums, because I feel like drums are always the heartbeat of the song, and that this music, whatever the resistance is about, that the fact that there's always drums in it, there's always drumming in it, there's always that rhythm in it, which goes back to the beating heart. You know, this is all about the heart beating for freedom and the heart yearning for freedom and all of that. So we hear it in those drums. So I think that's so wonderful that you say that.
I always have a hard time talking about modern day music, right? And modern sound and present day, blah, blah, blah music, when it's in any way attached to African-American culture without mentioning hip hop, right? So when I think hip hop, right, that's always in the mix somewhere, right? And you talking about drums, bro, the drums in hip hop, like, come on, like, you know what I mean? Like sonically, that's kind of that is the heartbeat sonically of hip hop. You know, that's the heartbeat.
Had no idea that she was a part of a family that had been engaged in the movement. She herself discovered climate change was an issue. And one of the reasons that she was drawn to it was because that worldwide movement was given such a jolt of energy by Greta Thunberg, who just really was such a young person to be speaking so eloquently about such a complicated issue. And Janet came upon some of the videos of this very young activist talking about climate change, and began to really look at people all around the world participating in these and how much they were the same age that she was. And it got to a point where she felt like, okay, I'm looking at this, I'm feeling this, I have to do something. Now is the moment for me to do something. And I put it off, and I didn't do it last week, and I didn't do it the week before, but this is that moment when I have to do it. And I think that's part of what happens with movements, is that they energize people that they don't even know are watching.
So Janet and her friends are musicians, as Pearl mentioned, and the three friends have been preparing for a talent show. And they have been practicing, working really hard to create a song about climate change, because it's something that they're invested. That Janet has brought this to their attention, and so Janet has written this song about climate change. And in that moment when Janet makes a decision to take a stand, to organize her own sit-in at her own school, it conflicts with the talent show, and she's not able to participate, and that sets off some tensions and some conflicts and some arguments with her friends, who feel that she has betrayed them and she's letting them down. And there's something that Pearl wrote in these characters, and that's the part of taking the risks that you take when you take a stand, when you opt to do what John Lewis says is get in that good trouble, right? Which Pearl quotes in the play. It's hard. It can feel scary. It can feel like a lot of people are mad at you, or that you're letting people down. And but throughout this, Janet's convictions and explaining why it's important to her, she keeps telling everybody, my house is on fire, our house is on fire. And you feel that fear and that comes with that, of seeing what's going on. And so so she works with her brother to write, to expand the song that she started with her friends. And it is this song, Our House is on Fire, that she performs on the front steps of her school the following day, that manifests itself, and her friends join her, and it's this wonderful, beautiful song that Eugene has created.
So I couldn't even imagine how you could weave all of it together, but it's exactly what I would have wanted her to be thinking and doing and writing and encouraging her friends to be a part of it. So it's always wonderful to be able to collaborate with other artists, who have skills that you don't have, so that I can't write. I'm not a director. I mean, I can't write music, and I'm not a director. So that when we all come together, we all bring something to the process that wouldn't be there if it wasn't all of us together. And I feel that way about that song. Like, it was such a wonderful expression of what we were all thinking about with this character and hoping for this character. So it really brought it all together.
All right, so we are here. Time to test drive this song. I've heard a lot of parts in my head, and now to hear what they sound like coming from the talent, the vocals of River Kearse, who plays Janet in Sit In. Good to have you here, River. Ready to try some things?
Yeah. Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. How old are you, River?
I'm 11.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good age. Good age to be into some music. All right, you ready to test drive it? See what we got?
Yeah.
All right. So the idea is a house is on fire. I refuse to let it burn. Can you sing that much?
Yeah. House is on fire. I refuse to let it burn.
That's good. Yep. A house is on fire. I refuse. So the rhythms, think rhythmically. I refuse, right? House is on fire. I refuse to let it burn. You see how they kind of match there? All right, try it again.
A house is on fire. I refuse to let it burn.
That's it exactly. Yeah. And we'll figure out different ways to phrase it. So one way of phrasing it is cool the way you're doing it now. House is on fire. I refuse. See that fire. So let's try one where the fire is more straight. A house is on fire. I refuse to let him. House is on fire. Can you try that one?
A house is on fire. I refuse to let it burn.
Yeah, good job of following direction. That's it exactly. So we'll see which one kind of works. You know what I mean? I kind of like the laid back version. The a house is on fire. I refuse. So now we're talking phrasing, right? And as dope of a singer as you are, and as dope of a singer as you're going to be, it's always good to recognize and remember the difference between solo singing and ensemble singing, right? So this will be more ensemble singing for you. So whatever we kind of lock in, it'll have to be that so that the other two girls can match you. You know what I mean? So if we decide to go with a house is on fire, I refuse, then you have to sing it in that kind of rhythm and cadence every time so the girls can match you. Now, if it was a straight solo, as the composer and MD, I'd be like, that's cool. It can be slightly different each time. I don't care. But this is more for so we'll have to lock it in either way.